Okay, so I love it. I see your smile back there.
That was a great intro.
Thank you. I see your smile, so we're loving that because all our guests are smiling at their intros, so it's a good thing. I as welcome back to Unfiltered Unspoken, and today we have Christina Gruber. Is that correct? I said it right.
It is. It
Okay,
is.
good. And she has an interesting life experience story to tell. You get ready for this. Christina, I'm going to bring you up if you can introduce yourself and let the audience know how things about you, sorry, and then Sid is going to kick off the first question.
Okay, great. My name is Christina Gruber. I am originally from New Jersey. I moved to Las Vegas in 1997. I finished my college degree out at UNLV and became a CPA in 2004. And for fun, I do triathlons. I just finished a full Ironman in Chattanooga, Tennessee in September of 2022. I am a mother of two amazing children, 19 and almost 13. And most importantly, I am a mass shooting survivor. On October 1st of 2017, I was attending the Route 91 Music Festival out here in Las Vegas when a gunman opened fire on the crowd from the Mandalay Bay Resort Hotel. And as a result, 58 people died from that night. And then since then, several others have also succumbed to their injuries from that evening. I was actually shot. I had 18 pieces of shrapnel in my legs. So I was taken into the hospital and treated for those injuries. And as a result, it kind of fueled my fire to pursue longer distance triathlons. At the time, I had only wanted to do the small sprints and Olympic distance. I had been a runner originally. But then after that, I decided, no, I need to do more because I need to do more in memory of the people that passed away. We call them the angels. And so that started my long distance course journey. And since then, I've done 4 half Ironman distances and 1 full Ironman distance. And I'm continuing this journey as the years go on.
Wow, that is a roller coaster here. I'm sure that is nonstop. So we normally like to start at the beginning here, and I assume, well, the way I see it is something really good or really bad had to happen for you to move clear across the country. So what was life like growing up? What was your childhood like? What was your experience at home?
So I was an only child. I grew up to 2 immigrant parents. I'm a firstborn American in my family. My dad moved here from Germany when he was 14, and my mom moved here from Cyprus when she was 30. They met a few years after she had moved here and had me. I was supposed to actually have 2 younger brothers, but my mom did miscarry those 2. So I was the only one. Both of them being European, there was a much stronger, I don't know, I felt I had higher expectations of becoming something. And, I always behaved for the most part. We always had some bad times, right? But, it was fine. But I think I was looking to get out because I had just been we didn't have a lot of money. I was always the sole person of focus in the whole family's life, basically. And I don't know, I just wanted something different. I had been going to school for college in Brooklyn, New York, commuting via subway every day from New Jersey. After working till 2 a.m., I was bartending at a very busy nightclub. And so I was also a pharmacy major. So I was taking a lot of difficult classes, of which I didn't do too great at because I just didn't understand the teachers very well. They didn't speak very good English. So I was ready for a change. And a girlfriend of mine said she was moving out to Las Vegas to go live with her sister's ex-boyfriend, I believe it was, from high school. So granted, he was 30 at the time. So this would have been 12 years after. And we had driven out. And on the way out, we had gotten into a bad car accident in Indiana. We went through a stop sign and almost actually got hit by a tractor trailer. And maybe not a tractor trailer, a big truck. Can't remember what they're called, but we ended up flying out. Him and his family flew us out, and I met him, and he ended up becoming my first husband. A few years later, we had a long distance relationship for some time, and then I moved out. I had already been planning on taking a semester off at school. The science thing didn't work out for me, so I was going back to business because that's what I knew, that's what I succeeded at. So I moved out a short while after and ended up finishing college out here at UNLV and getting my CPA license. And unfortunately, because I had met this gentleman young, we married young, we ended up being more roommates. And honestly, to this day, he's still a great friend of mine, and I'm friends with his wife now, his family. He coaches my son's football team. So, we're still on very good terms. And that's how I ended up out here.
Oh, wow. So I want to go back before we jump there. Did you go through any childhood abuse?
I did. So when I was in 6th grade, I actually was walking. We had gone to Burger King, a girlfriend of mine and I, and on the way back, there had been a truck full of men, I want to say in their 20s, so we're 12 at the time. They had stopped a little bit ahead, and one of the men got out and basically told my girlfriend and I that he had a weapon on him, and he led us into the woods. So it was a lot of wooded areas where we were walking. And at that time, he had physically molested myself, but then I basically had to watch her give oral sex to him forcefully. And, and he threatened us and said, if you tell anybody, I'll kill you, I'll find you, And so after that whole ordeal happened, I went home and I told my parents, and they were never ones to, what's the good word? Like stick up for, they were always very like, oh, it's okay, no big deal. Well, I went and I told my uncle, and he and I went and filed the police report, but it's almost as if they didn't believe me. And so it kind of muted me a little bit, because the two people that were supposed to believe me and stick by me and bring me to the police station to file a report and go through all these actions, they didn't stick up for me at that time. And I don't discount, them and how they parented. They were great parents. They were amazing. But unfortunately, due to circumstances of their own, they didn't know how to communicate well. And so I suffered the brunt of that at times. And that was one instance where I was just muted and I just didn't matter, or felt like it didn't matter.
I have a 2-part question.
Okay.
First, did you ever run into those gentlemen again? Or were they ever found after you filed your police report? And you can answer that first, because I kind of forgot where I was going with the other one. So that's you can answer that one first.
Okay. No, they didn't ever find them. However, it was years later. I think I had been, I don't know. I might have even visited from Las Vegas, or it was in my late teenage years. I had gone to a store in town, and I saw someone behind the counter, and I had this weird gut feeling, and I don't know if it was him, but he resembled what he could have looked like years later. But I had this strange feeling, but no, I never ran into them unless that was definitely him. I did have a weird feeling about it, and it could have been, but I don't think he recognized me.
Oh
Yes,
wow.
I remember what it was. It was I know your parents immigrated very young, but were they legal? Was that why maybe they wanted to stay away from police or just kind of to
Yes.
themselves?
They were both legal. My
Okay.
dad had his green card, and my mom was an American citizen. So
Okay.
yeah, they just weren't up to sticking up for themselves, let alone someone else. Right? They were always behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Wow. So how did it wow. How did it affect you in school moving forward? Sixth grade, and then you have to move on, and your parents didn't stick up for you. I mean, your uncle did. Did it cause tension in the home? And then how did it affect you in school?
Honestly, I don't recall much of that. I felt like it was just brushed under the rug, per se. But I feel that could have been the start to some of the choices I made, maybe in men after that, right? And, seeking validation, um, ending up in situations I shouldn't have been in. And, it took a while to kind of put all these pieces together. I mean, honestly, I just started speaking about that maybe 2 years ago. Nobody really knew about it. And that's because I, have had some other situations of which I've just basically had to do a lot of self growth and looking inward on why I made the decisions I did in life, and growing from that and realizing what caused some of this stuff.
What was there, a change in the atmosphere between you and your friend?
We ended up not being friends anymore. I think she went to a different school. She got moved to a different school, and then we just lost touch. I don't know whatever happened with her. I mean, I couldn't even find her on social media if I tried. But yeah, she moved away very shortly after that, and we lost touch.
So her parents believed her then. That's what it sounds like to get them.
Yeah.
Her parents never reached out to your parents or reached out to you. I mean, to you, so y'all could
No.
get this
Mm-mm. No. No.
interesting.
I mean, that would be the first thing I would do as a mom.
Yeah, yeah. I would have
uh,
thought both parents would have been like, we need to go to the police station,
yeah.
or y'all were together, or even the police to
Right.
pull both of you
To
in.
collaborate and
Yeah,
right. No.
yeah.
So outside of, just generally not, meshing with your ex-husband, both being young and whatnot, was there any other type of turmoil in your situation? And when you kind of said in regard to your choice in men,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of choices did you make?
Well, one of the first bad choices was dating someone that ended up in jail for pulling a gun out on someone. um, and I always tend to go for that, that bad boy, when I was younger, right? And then, I met my first ex-husband, and he wasn't like that at all, but he did have an addiction problem, and it was gambling. And and he since then is better, and his new wife helped him through that. And so our situation wasn't very intense, other than there were secrets. But I guess after that, I met my kid's dad, and that became a very emotionally abusive situation in which there was a lot of name calling, there was lack of communication, there was lots of affairs had by him, and me just taking him back constantly because I didn't want my kids to grow up in a broken home. My parents have been married for 48 years until my dad died this past year. And so I always grew up while it was not a perfect home, it was a home of having both parents together. So I didn't want to disappoint them or anybody else by getting a divorce, right? So it took a lot of years. I want to say we were together for 13 years. I believe, 13 to 15 years. And it took a lot of affairs before I finally stood up and had the courage to walk away and be on my own. So, yeah. And I mean, that's really the gist of it, right? Like there was emotional abuse from that situation paired with the situation in my childhood that gave me a lot of insecurities and lack of self-confidence and a lot of problems like internally, right?
So for 13 years, and folks always ask this, and I know what you're going through being a domestic survivor. Why did it take 13 years to leave? I mean, what was the draw? Like, how many times did he cheat on you? And you knew about the cheating, all of them? Was he like he didn't care, messy cheating?
Denied it all. Denied it all. The first affair was actually when I was pregnant with my daughter, and I don't even remember how I found the girl's number. I don't know. I did a lot of investigation over that 13. I could be an FBI agent. But that was the first affair. And then, he would keep denying it. And then, kind of love bomb me with gifts and, kind of just act differently, right? Like we'd have such a great time. We're on vacation or, I had this belief in him that he was going to change and that I was the one that was going to do it. And that he was the person I was supposed to spend forever with and have a family with. And so that's why I say I literally thought it would be different someday, right? And I had that little respect for myself, right? That I allowed it to happen.
Sorry, understood. Was there any outside of just the betrayal aspect of it all? Was there any other ways that you suffered behind the affairs? Whether it be financially, whether it be with your health, how else were you affected by his cheating?
So we had always had separate finances. So financially, I can tell you that he also had a gambling problem, and financially, I walked up to one of our houses one day, and there was a foreclosure notice on the door. So there was that. One day, my car was out of the driveway because he was making payments on it, and it had been repoed. So because we didn't share finances, and because there was this facade of us doing so well, like expensive vacations, dinners, great life, right? I didn't realize that there were these other issues. So I didn't, and I blame myself for not having partial control of that situation, right? Like I should have said, let me pay for the more, let me handle the bills, but I think in a way it was his way of controlling and hiding what he was doing, right? Because had I had more exposure to his finances, I would have seen more of his spending, not only at casinos, but maybe flowers for others, or, and a lot of this stuff came up when we subpoenaed records in court. And so, I trusted him, and he was supposed to be my forever. And I didn't know any better, basically. And it's my own fault. I know better now. Not gonna happen again, but
Did he ever apologize to you? Like, did he ever say sorry? Because you share kids together. So, what is the relationship with? I mean, what was the relationship? Because the kids are older now.
okay. So he actually just started talking to me about a year ago, and it's still very minimal. He started dating someone very shortly after I moved out, and she has been a godsend. She's actually who I speak to about the kids for the most part, and we co-parent a lot together. And so that was really hard. It was really uncomfortable for the kids, right? But I try to always remain positive in front of them. I never badmouthed him. I never told them the depth of what was going on, why we divorced, why, they just knew that mommy and daddy didn't like each other. And that's all they knew. And that's okay. I don't need them to know. If they want, my daughter's 19 now. If she asks me years from now, I might talk to her about it, but I don't want them to think any differently of part of them, right? Because if they think differently about part of them, they'll think differently about themselves, right? And so I try to keep them out of it and keep a positive environment for them.
Yeah, and that's understood. Did they struggle at all, or have any obstacles at the time of the divorce that or saw any changes in them?
At the time, no, but as years progressed, my daughter got into a bad crowd and, had some issues in school, and my son had a tick that has since gone, but, he's excelling beyond any expectations. He's completely brilliant and so forth. But honestly, they live my daughter lives with me full time now, but they did live in two very loving households, right? So the two of them, and then myself, no matter what, we always gave them the love that they needed. And what I try to do also is, let's say there's a disciplinary action, which there really isn't very many for my son, because honestly, he's just such a good kid. But I always try to ask them, how are you handling this? What's your disciplinary action? What are your rules? I try to keep consistent rules amongst the two households, so one isn't better than the other or favored more. And it provides more stability for them too, I believe, so that they don't have two sets of rules for different houses.
Yeah, I've never heard anyone say that. I don't what happens at dad's, it happens at dad's. What happens at mom happens at mom. Kids usually end up manipulating parents like that. So
Yeah. Oh no. I even do that with the allowance. I said, what do you get for an allowance there? What do you do? Tells me. I'm like, okay, well, these are the chores you'll have at my house, and you'll get the same exact allowance.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. So I want to get into this mass shooting survival. You were a part of the Las Vegas shooting, and when did you realize that the bullets were going off? Was it after you got you said in your leg, you got shot in your leg, correct? Um,
Right.
that when you realized that you were a part of maybe potentially losing your life? Were you afraid? Like,
Uh, yeah. I was there that weekend, with friends. I knew probably about 40 people at any given point in time. The country music community here in town is very small. We know everybody, right? And during Jason Aldean's performance, it was a few minutes into one of his songs where we thought there were fireworks going on because we heard that popping, and so we looked in the sky, and I remember looking at my friends saying there's no fireworks. And then I guess one of them saw someone drop because we were fairly close to the stage. We were about, I want to say maybe 20 yards out. See, we were fairly close to the stage. So I think one of them saw someone drop or someone saw someone. And then at that point we were notified, someone said, someone's got a gun or someone's shooting or whatnot. And at that point, I had ran and hid underneath a table in a bar section until there was a break in fire. And then after that, I ran again and the shooting began again. And at that point, I felt a pop in my leg. And I had noticed that there was blood dripping. So I had known I had been hit. So honestly, that pushed me to run faster. And I ended up running outside of the venue and behind a church that was near the venue. And at that point, I had hid behind the church and contacted actually one of my friends that had just left with her 12-year-old daughter at the time. They had just left before that performer because they didn't really want to see him. And there was just a lot of, intoxicated people bumping into them. So they left. They had just gotten to their car at valet when the shooting began. And she had contacted me while I was behind the church. And all I said is, are my kids okay? Where are the kids? I didn't know what was going on. All I knew was that make sure the kids are okay, because I didn't know what was going to happen to me. At that point in time, I didn't know where the shooter was, if there was more than one, if they could still get to me. I just knew that my kids needed to be safe. And at that point, that's all that really mattered to me. While I was behind the church, a man and his wife, they're from California. The man he might either be a fireman or I can't remember his profession, but he took his belt off and made a tourniquet on my leg and piggybacked me to a car on the street, which transported me and some of the other victims to a nearby hospital. So it was really at the time I was running that I realized I had become hit, but I didn't know the extent of my injuries. Were they worse? Were they not bad? I just know I had been hit, and I had never experienced anything like that in my life. So of course I'm thinking, this is game over for me. But fortunately I'm still standing.
Jesus, that's heavy. Because it's just so chaotic already. That would just, ooh. That's I know that how were you okay after that? Like how were you dealing after all of that happened? Like how was that sitting on you?
So when I was at the hospital, I had found out that the large piece, it was a piece of shrapnel, had just missed my femoral artery, and that's your largest artery. So if it would have hit that artery, I probably would have bled out. And so, me being a runner and a triathlete, my next thing was like, well, when am I going to be able to deal with, because I started running back during my marriage to kind of calm everything going on, right? And so after that, I was sidelined for a little bit. But I ended up going to therapy. I had a hard time, and I still have a hard time going to events where there's a large crowd without being over vigilant about my surroundings. I used to be at the front of the stage all the time, and now I'm always standing back so that I can see what's going around. If it's an outdoor venue, I'm looking at buildings around. If those pose a danger, I refuse to go downtown to downtown Las Vegas anymore. There's been a lot of great concerts that I could have gone to, and I'm like, no, not doing it. I mean, I've been to a country music festival, a couple of them since then, and I will go to those. For some reason, I still feel safe around those. You know, I have the survivor's guilt, in which there are days when things aren't going well. And I will say, you know, I wish I would have passed that night versus someone else who had all of this like love and all these things going for them. And, you know, so I get into my head sometimes and say, oh, I wish I would have just been done then. But then I realize, you know, all the blessings I have, right? I truly believe that I was saved so that I could share my story and provide some inspiration to some, and so that I could help others just by talking about it, because there's so many people that don't want to talk about it, and it's important to talk about it, especially with the increase of incidents happening, schools, clubs, bars, everywhere. It seems like every single day there is a new story about some sort of mass shooting that's occurred in the U.S., mostly in the U.S. Obviously, we've had some in other countries, but to this day, the mass shooting on October 1 is still the largest mass shooting in the U.S. history. And, I think if I could just get to some of these other survivors that might be struggling now, I feel like I could help them. I feel like I can help others through my experiences and the pain that I've felt before, right?
So this situation has pretty much traumatized you. I just can only imagine the paranoia. It just going where you get that when you go speak to in other areas as well. Are you always looking?
Yeah. I'm always looking. If there's a big crowd, I'm usually very, I stick to myself, especially in large crowds, because I rather observe. But 4th of July is hard for me, right? Like, as long as I see the fireworks, I'm fine. If I don't see them, I am a mess. Like last summer, I think my son was sitting on the couch with me, and I'm sitting there, and it literally sounded like someone let a grenade go in my yard. And of course, people are letting things go. It's around 4th of July, not realizing, there could be people with PTSD around. And I jumped so high, and and he just looks at me. He's like, "It's okay, Mom. It's okay." And even if we're at, went to a baseball game, there were fireworks, and he's like, "Are you good? Are you good?" And if they're not with me, they're constantly checking on me. How are you doing? And it's gotten better as the years have gone by. But the main thing that I still see stick around is my hypervigilance about what's going on around me. And, I guess you could call it paranoia. I've gotten better. I used to having to sit at a restaurant facing the entranceway, but now I'm forcing myself to sit the other way to get my mind kind of turned around on that situation, right? So, it's a lot of training, but it's awareness. It's awareness. And when my daughter goes to the Electric Daisy concert festival, I don't know, it's EDC. And I said, make sure you keep your eyes on everybody. When my son goes to camp, he goes to events at theme parks, make sure you keep an eye. If you see something, say something. So it provides a lot of conversation, to people, when they're going to an event. Hey, just keep your eye out. If you see someone acting funny, like, pay attention to them. You tell someone if you need to. If someone's at a parade, this example was given to me. If someone's at a parade and they're wearing a trench coat and it's 100 degrees out, well, that person might not be up to good. So talk to someone about it. Tell the authorities, because even if it's a false alarm, it's better than having an incident happen like some of these other incidents.
Yes, yeah. And if you have, which I'm sure, kind of kept up with the developments, of the shooter, just because like you said, we have seen so many of these, like it's kind of, they all kind of run together and it's horrible. But if you could give the viewers a kind of synopsis of what has come, of the shooter, how everything developed, were you part of any, cases, things that you had to go through legally, in regard to being a victim, how did that kind of come together for you?
Right. Well, so unfortunately, the shooter did kill himself that night. So there were very little answers. I have gone through the police reports that were out publicly, and there's no answers really. Like, all we know about him was his profession and that he liked to gamble. And unfortunately, that doesn't sit well with me. I'm that type of person. Well, what happened? Like, why would he do something? Why would he inflict such harm? And then, this was something I spoke about to my therapist, and she just said, sometimes it's just evil and there is no reason, and it's just evil trying to make its way. And, I don't want to get religious on you guys, but it's how she explained it is the devil trying to make his way onto, the good of the people or whatnot. Right. And so, yeah, unfortunately there's not much, and it's frustrating that we don't have answers. As one of the people that were very affected by this, it's angering. It makes me angry that there aren't answers. It makes me distrustful that there's more answers that we aren't being told, honestly. But at this point, 8 years later, 6 years later, we can't, I can't dwell on it, right? I have to move on. Every year I visit the memorial that we have set up. We've also got a new memorial being built, and I try to do good in the memory of those that passed, and that can't do good anymore, right? And so with every race, there's not a race that goes by that if I'm struggling, I don't stop, because I say I'm lucky that I can still do this after I had 18 pieces of shrapnel in my legs. And I'm very fortunate I can still do this and still perform at a very good level. And I focus on the gratitude that I have and try not to think about the negative that man brought about to so many people.
Wow. And it's sad and it's unfortunate that one person, you don't know the mental health condition, you can't get any answers, and you're a survivor and you almost lost your life, and just out of the blue. It's like it just came, and that is why it's so important that people understand that enjoy life, live life, because it takes a second for someone's life to be taken. And I can only imagine y'all watching bodies drop, the mental state of it. Do you think that you will ever be able to live a normal life without paranoia or PTSD?
Probably not, right? Because the world isn't getting any safer as we know it. I Yeah, I don't think I'll ever be able to not have some of that in the back of my mind. I mean, I will tell you that weekend before that happened was still to this day the best weekend of my life. And the happiness and joy of that weekend is something that I choose to focus on, despite all the pain that happened that night. Um, for years I said, man, I wish I could just be as happy. I wish I could just be as happy. I was chasing something for so many years. And then when I switched it to gratitude, I just, it was a game changer for me, honestly, on how I viewed this whole situation. It wasn't my time, unfortunately. I'm not saying it was anybody else's time, but it clearly wasn't my time, and I survived for a reason.
How was your recovery? What was kind of the steps of that, and how long did it take you to kind of get? I wouldn't even say back to normal, but back to work in order, I should say.
Well, so the event happened on a Sunday night. I got home from the hospital. I wasn't kept overnight. I got home at 5:30 in the morning with crutches. Went to an orthopedic surgeon to talk to him about that shrapnel because I was freaked out about not running. And that's how I found out I had the 18 pieces of shrapnel in my legs. And he said they would just come out. And so I'm like, okay. Well, I ended up going to work that Friday. So I took 4 days off and went back to work. And that was a big mistake. I think the biggest thing that I can remember is having this brain fog. I didn't know what day it was. I couldn't think clearly. I feel I should have taken more time to recover from what had happened emotionally, mentally. It took a good 6 months at least, I think, to be functioning normally again. From that perspective, as far as my leg went, some of the pieces came out naturally. The original one that was lodged in my leg, I ended up getting removed professionally about 3 years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, by a dermatologist in town. Plastic surgeon or dermatologist? I don't remember, but he did it for free because it was related to the October 1 incident. But I remember running the Remembrance 5K for that event in early December. So I was back up and running, and 2 months later, I wasn't running at that speed I normally would have been. And then up until I had it removed a few years ago, I still was running, but had a pain. It felt like it was kind of sticking through my leg. I don't know if it was moving. There was a very sharp edge. I still actually have the piece of shrapnel in my office somewhere. It's about dime size. And that's why I had to have it removed, because I would run and I would be constantly reminded physically of that in my leg. And so, so I mean, physically, I think I recovered. I was able to do things again. I think I got rid of the crutches after a week and just hobbled along because I just didn't like it. I didn't like any of it. And, but it was more of a mental thing that I think took longer. The brain fog, the depression, like having a history of depression and anxiety already, I think it was amplified by this event. And so, whereas I was sad about other things, then it turned to, well, it should have been me. It should have, I should have been the one that died that night. And so, like I said, the mental thing was definitely the hardest part. And, still going through it. I've gone through lots of therapy. I do lots of reading. There's still days where, like any of us, we just have bad days, and things get to you a little bit more.
So, do you think that process was grieving? And then even after the 2 months, I know you're pushing along, but do you think you should have waited? Do you feel like you were kind of, I'm not going to say abusing maybe yourself more, not healing and facing what happened during the mass shooting?
Honestly, I attribute my training and doing triathlons to my healing process. I attribute my ability to heal, um, that to this day, that's been a way. The running when I was married has been a way to mentally get through stuff. And now, and even after that, I mean, triathlon, I say it's saved my life. I'll be honest with you. I mean, that's what gets me through, just competing. And whether I'm not, I'm not the fastest person, I'm definitely not going to be, a world champion. But the fact that I'm out there pushing myself and doing something that I thought I couldn't do, I didn't learn how to swim until 2016. And then I swam 2.4 miles in a river in October. So I was deathly afraid of drowning. So that pushes me beyond my limits, beyond my fears. And that makes me feel better about myself. So when I'm going through these rough times or going through that time after October 1, that took my mind off of the grieving in a positive way, right? After the incident, I drank a lot 3 months after. And I stopped drinking cold turkey on January 1 because I had noticed myself, like I was using alcohol to help bandage what I had experienced. And so I learned that doing triathlon and pushing myself physically in a positive way, that was my vice now, right? And that's what's helped me. So I don't regret starting 2 months after, honestly. I feel that without it, I would have definitely been much worse off.
And that's what we want the audience to see, that healing piece. What helps you heal.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Did you at any point lean on pain medication, for any extended period of time?
Nope. I'm actually very against pain medication just because of their highly addictive uh, aspects or characteristics. I don't know what word I'm looking for. But yeah, I didn't use painkillers at all. I medicated with whiskey for 3 months. I learned how to make a really good old fashioned.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, did people notice that change when you started drinking?
No, I mean, I think the people I was hanging around were doing the same thing because they had all been there too. So we just all leaned on each other and just tended to basically partying,
And speaking of, were any of the group that you were with at the concert, were they okay, or were anyone else injured that you knew?
There was nobody else that I knew, thank God, that was injured. I did have a friend aid in lifting injured people out and transporting them. But other than that, there had been no other physical injuries to people I knew personally.
And I was going to ask, I know you're going through the PTSD and the paranoia. Are you dealing with anxiety and depression as well because of this? I guess more so.
Yeah, I can't attribute it to one instance in my life, but about, let's say, 2 years ago, I was having a lot of like racing heartbeat, and so I hadn't been on anxiety medicine at the time. Um, but I had gotten EKGs. I had gone to the ER just thinking I was like, there was one day I couldn't breathe when I woke up. I said, I can't get any air in. Went to the ER and it was a panic attack. And I've had a couple of those. So, like I said, is it from October 1? I don't know. Is it from all this collaboration of, can I curse? Shit, that's happened to me
This is
in my
unfiltered,
life.
unspoken. You can say whatever you want to say.
Maybe it's a collaboration of all this stuff that's happened to me that finally my body is like, hey, you need to deal with this and stop running from it. And we're going to help you, send you to the doctor. You're going to get the meds, and then you're going to figure out how to cope with all this stuff in a healthy way. And the meds are going to help you. And so I don't know what caused it all. I think it was just a lot of everything, right?
Yes, definitely a lot of everything. I had a question and it lost to me. Where are we at in the story here? Oh, yes, because I noticed something you said earlier on, and in my mind, I'm like, if it happened the way I think it happened, that's really petty. But you said your ex-husband, you pretty much haven't really spoken to him until like last year. Like, did he contact you after, this whole ordeal? Like, was that actually a literal, not talk to you since last year?
Actually, my phone was lost that night, and his number was the only one that I could remember.
Oh,
So
Wow.
I actually called him, and actually, I don't know if I called him or the hospital called him. I don't remember. A lot of that night's a blur. But him and my first husband are friends, and they ended up going to pick up my parents and bring them down to the hospital, which I was super mad at. I was like, they did not need to know I was here, But yeah, but basically transported them to the hospital. And yeah, we still didn't really speak much after that.
But at least they were there.
look, it's just, they showed up and
Yeah,
it
but
was
they
when it was
didn't need
time.
to see that, right? Like, I don't know. Just as they were protective of me, I think I was protective of them. I mean, they were older. My mom was not healthy, and I'm like, man, I could have let them not even know I was even involved in that whole incident, and they would never have known.
How did your ex-husbands, like, how did they do? They are both in the room, they're friends, and they're both at the hospital. Like, what was their support?
My friends were really supportive and talking. He was very non-communicative, as he was during the marriage. So he didn't really say much. But fortunately, like, I had some very close friends that were there with me. One of my friends was actually in the room with me the entire time. She was at the concert and had left and came back and was with me, took me to doctor's appointments. I was in her wedding last year. Like, she's a very special friend of mine. And yeah, I had some really good friends that supported me and helped me through all this. And the one good thing is when the family that I have gained through this ordeal, we call us the Route 91 family. I mean, we would do anything for one another. And during the reunions, it's great to see people. I mean, I've visited other states and gone to dinner with some of these people. I consider them not friends, just family now. And if I've never even met them and someone was in town and needed something, I would do it for them. And I know that they would do it for me. And I think it's created this bond that we didn't ask for, but I'm sure we're all happy to have now.
I love it. Look, we're at. Sometimes I wish we were like an hour and a half or an hour, so we're almost at time. So I want to just ask really quick if you can give the audience maybe two advices, and I think you already given one through the exercise piece of it, but you can repeat it again on ways that you're healing because you're actually still going through a healing process. So maybe a two piece ways that you're healing and how you're trying to continue to heal through the difficulties that you're going through.
Okay. So one of the most important things I can say is don't hold it in. Talk about it, whether it's to a professional, whether it's to a friend, or a trusted individual. Don't keep it in, because I think when people keep feelings in, that's when they have a tendency to implode, and that's not healthy. Definitely, like we talked about earlier, find a healthy way to deal with it, whether it's exercising, walking, spending time with friends, playing with your dog or cat or whatever you want to have. Find positive outlets to turn to versus drugs or alcohol or even abusive relationships, right? And finally, never stop being, or not, never stop having gratitude, because no matter how bad things get, um, there's something to be to have gratitude for. And, you know, despite the bad that's happened, there's a lesson to be learned, and an opportunity to be had. And so always keep your head up, and keep your faith in yourself and those around you.
Great words of advice. So now we are at our point where we do shameless plug. So you see your banner scrolling across the bottom here. Now is when you can let our viewers know where you would like traffic drawn to, whether that's your website or your business, anything you have coming, your ventures, anything you want to blast about yourself, you have the spotlight.
Awesome. Well, yeah, you've got my contact information. You can email me or find me on Facebook to follow my journey. What I'm doing more and more of is public speaking, to talk about trauma and survival. I have spoken at a conference in Washington, D.C. to over 700 people about my situation, and I'm working with other companies in order to become a guest speaker to their businesses and organizations as well. So if there are any questions, or if you just need someone to talk to, that an ear to listen, I'm here. Feel free to reach out, and I look forward to hearing from you.
We want to thank you for being a guest on Unfiltered Unspoken. We just love our guests because we're getting all different traumas, and you know, thank God that you're still here, that you survived the mass shooting, and all the wonderful things that you're doing to contribute to help others that have been in incidents like you. So we admire your work. Keep your work, keep doing your work, and keep blessing those that need to be blessed by you.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to get my voice out.
Absolutely. And we'll do it again, over and over
Awesome.
again. Like, yeah.
I look forward to it.
Yeah. So we want to thank you for tuning in to Unfiltered Unspoken podcast, where we're going to continue to share life experiences of others and hope that someone will connect to start the journey to healing. And as you heard Christina say, I apologize, don't hold it in, talk about it, release it, talk about it to someone that you can trust. And also, she said something important: never stop having gratitude. Always have gratitude. It's very, very important. So, thank you for tuning in. We will see you soon, and have a blessed day.